Right, welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining. Really appreciate it. Apologies in advance for my internet today. I'm in an undisclosed location that I will not disclose because it's undisclosed. But I thank you for joining. We're going to keep it tight and short. This is, of course, Midterms Explained, and the final installment of this series. We extended it for 5 more because we were having just so much fun for the first 5. And today we end the Midterms Explained series with California, the best state in the union, my favorite state, really just the most amazing place on earth. And we are in conversation with the amazing chair of the Democratic Party, Rusty Hicks, who I'll from now on only refer to as Rusty. He is our chair, our guy, our fearless leader. And Rusty, thank you so much for doing this for us today. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me, and good to see everybody out there.
Nice. So let's just get right into it, Rusty, if you don't mind. This is about battleground states. Is California a battleground state? I mean, how does it fit into this whole series?
Well, I think California is absolutely a battleground state because you can't hold the House without winning some seats in California. Obviously, we provide the backbone of the Democratic caucus in the House. And in a really challenging election like 2022, California is going to be incredibly important to giving us a chance, giving us an opportunity to have a Speaker, Nancy Pelosi.
Nice. Yes, a lot of people don't realize that. Just because California is liberal bending doesn't mean that we can take it for granted. We have to win every seat that we can in the state. So first I wanted to talk about the recalls. There's been a lot of attention on the recalls this year in San Francisco, obviously, but statewide as well. Do you think the recent statewide recall is going to have an effect or an impact on the election season in California?
Well, in the short version is no, but I do think that a lot of resources went into not only carrying out the election, but all of the political work that took place around that election. You know, Governor Newsom raised and spent roughly $73 million to defeat that recall and defeat it handily. The state spent roughly $250,000 just running the election. And to essentially have a replay of his win in 2018. But I think what you're also seeing, you're seeing recalls take place around the state. And yes, San Francisco politics is its own unique style of politics. And we could have a full conversation about what took place over the last 10 days.
Unique, use the word unique. Unique is a nice way of putting it. I'll take unique.
But I would call everyone's attention to what is happening in red and purple parts of the state. Places like Redding, places like Shasta County, where you have far right-wing extremists that are using a legal vehicle. The recall is enshrined in our Constitution, but are using that vehicle to bring more extremism into halls of government and seats of power. And so I think that's something that we have to really pay attention to, because they are sort of writing a playbook right in front of us that we have to really pay attention to.
Got it. Okay, so let's just go from the top and run down the ticket down to the bottom of the ticket in this upcoming midterm. So let's start with Senate. We have an open Senate seat race. We have Senator Padilla was obviously appointed by Governor Newsom, and he's running to fill a full first term. Most people see this as a safe seat. Can you tell us a little bit about the race? Are people running against him on the Democrat side? Do we know who his Republican challengers will be? And are you worried?
Well, we have to wait until March the 11th for the formal filing deadline. But at this point in time, there isn't a strong challenger, certainly on the Republican ticket or the other side. And there isn't anyone, a notable Democrat that's running against Senator Padilla. I do think he's was a strong candidate for appointment and as a strong candidate for re-election. Very experienced and obviously leading on some incredibly important things in the Senate. And so I expect him to be in a good place. I know he is taking nothing for granted. In fact, I just saw this morning. He was doing a press event as he walked into the LA County Registrar's office to fill out his paperwork to run. So I know he's running hard and will continue to run that way through Election Day.
Nice. My one follow-up is, he would be our first Latin senator. We've never elected a Latinx person to the United States Senate in California. Is the party hoping to use his candidacy to activate Latin voters in the state in some way?
Well, certainly, given the challenges that we have all had of ensuring that the voices of Latino voters are heard at the ballot box here in California, having him at the top of the ticket is going to be a big driver. And so certainly whether it's in, promoting his candidacy and his campaign, but also ensuring that we are running field programs that communicate with Latino voters in their language, especially for those that are foreign born. I think the combination of the two is really going to help drive Latino turnout in this election.
Got it. Thank you. So let's go to Governor Newsom. He did just defeat a recall handily, as you put it. We were involved, in that recall effort very proudly. Manny's was not in the recall, but in helping prevent the recall. I think it was 60-40, so more than that, 65-35, something like that. So, and yes, thank you, Susan Pfeiffer, for all of your help and work with that. How does the party hope to use his candidacy again for governor to help down ballot races? It could still be an ugly fight, right? I mean, he did win strongly, so hopefully that will prevent a lot of competition. But yeah, what's your sense of the race right now? And again, same question for Senator Padilla. How do you hope to utilize this race in such a way?
Well, I mean, it certainly could be argued that we essentially had a 2022 general election in a 2021 recall election. And if he won handily there, it was going to be unlikely that real challengers were going to come forward, given that the race was going to get even harder for them. That was their shot. They took their shot, they missed. And so I do think that race is somewhat put to bed. Now, the governor probably doesn't see it that way. And if he were a part of this conversation, he would say, "What are you talking about? I absolutely have a race." But Governor, I think you're in a pretty good place at this point. Obviously, March 11th is that deadline. We'll be watching that. And I do know that many are trying to recruit. Republicans are running around trying to recruit a candidate. Right now, we've got Senator Dolly, who is from the northeastern part of the state. But he doesn't have a statewide profile, and I think it's going to be hard pressed to be able to pick up any steam against a sitting governor. I know there's been talk about Kevin Faulconer out of San Diego stepping in and running. Obviously, he did not do well in the recall election. And, California has no shortage of millionaires and billionaires who think that they could spend a couple bucks and try to take a run at a governor's seat. The path to statewide office is littered with rich people who have all tried to make it there. So, you never know. But I do think that having him, the governor and the senator, freed up to be able to support other candidates down the ballot is a big advantage. It gives them the opportunity to shed a light on really important races and focus our attention in some targeted seats that are not statewide. Obviously, California is a big state. It's really hard to campaign in California. And if you can focus your energy in particular seats, you can be even more effective.
I just love California. It is the best place ever, and I have deep love for it. And I just want to say it's exciting to be having this conversation about my home state. So let's go to the congressional map. Here's a poopsicle, though. We lost a congressional seat in the last census. That made me so sad. Can you talk about the new congressional map? Why did we lose a seat, and how does losing a seat, how's that changed the arithmetic? And our map's done? Do we know what the district boundaries are going to be? Can you give us a lay of the land on our map?
Well, ultimately, it comes down to it's proportional representation, and therefore, There was faster growth in other parts of the country than there was here in California. Doesn't mean that there wasn't growth here. It was just faster in other places in the country. And therefore, we go from 53 seats to 52 total seats. But I do think we do have the lines set. The redistricting commission completed those. Virtually all of the legal challenges have been put to bed. So the lines are what the lines are, and they're going to be the lines for the next 10 years. And so we have a pretty clear lay of the land as to what the boundaries will be, although there's still a little, a couple of jostling here and there around candidates in particular seats. Obviously, we'll get that finalized here pretty soon. The party will make its official endorsements at our convention coming up the first week of March. So in most of the races, we will have our candidate and we'll get to work in supporting them. But yeah, we've got final lines. We'll soon have final candidates, and then we can really get to work.
Got it. So I heard that the redistricting disproportionately affects Southern California from a Democrat and Republican perspective. Is that true? Can you explain that?
Yeah, generally what the commission does is that they, at least the last two iterations of line drawing that has taken place, they draw the state from north to south. And so the difference, primarily because of population changes as well as census challenges, resulted in Southern California, in particular LA, East and Southeast Los Angeles County, having the biggest impact in decrease in population, in counted population. And so you've seen the ripple effect of that out into the Inland Empire and into Orange County. So it does mean some seats have changed a bit. You don't see much of a change in Northern California. Obviously, many of those that are with us and those that will watch it later may say, well, the district that I'm in has changed pretty significantly. Like, I'm not connected to this community, or I'm connected to this community. In general terms, as far as you look at safe blue seats or really challenging red seats, there hasn't been a whole lot of changing, except for a slight move towards Democratic candidates. There's certainly some opportunities there that weren't there for us in the previous iteration of lines that are there for us this cycle. So
Got it. So if I have the,
oh, go ahead.
sorry, go ahead. I was just going to say, so if I have the math right, we had 42 Democratic seats in our delegation and 10 Republican. Are there any, I think you were just getting to it, are there any new pickup seats that you think might exist now because of the redistricting that didn't exist before?
So as I think about I always think about the math in first, what do you have to make sure that you hold? And I think there's 3 primary seats that we've got to keep an eye on in that hold category. Mike Levin in Southern California, Katie Porter also in Southern California, but also Josh Harder in the Central Valley, sort of northwestern portion of the Central Valley. Obviously, I know many folks here in San Francisco and around the state really worked hard on that seat in 2018 and to hold it in 2020. There's been a little shifting. His seat has gotten a little bit easier. He moved into the seat that was formerly held by Jerry McNerney, Congressman McNerney, who's not running for re-election. And his current seat, roughly 60% of his seat, is open. So we've got the opportunity to not only hold the seat that he is currently in, but we've also got the opportunity to make sure that we pick up that open seat. So I'd say it's 3.5 that we got to hold / get. And then from there, I think the seat that Mike Garcia currently sits in Southern California, the northern part of Los Angeles County, is one that has gotten better for us. Obviously, that was a seat that we lost by 333 votes in 2020. And I think we've got the opportunity to pick up that seat. It's a seat that's gotten even bluer. And then we move into the Central Valley. And I think there, the Valadeo seat that TJ Cox came up 1,542 votes short. And yes, I do remember all of these numbers because they haunt me in many ways. We've got the Rudy Salas, a current assembly member that's running for that seat, and I think he's a pretty solid candidate. Valadeo has, voted for the impeachment of Donald Trump, but hadn't been there on a number of other issues. So he has always been on the fence and has been always able to win in purple seats, and so he's a formidable opponent on the other side. But I do like Rudy Salas's chances of being able to pick up that seat. And then there's really the two seats in Orange County that we came up short with in 2020. So the seat held by Michelle Steele, Harley Ruda lost that seat by about 6,000 votes. Jay Chen, a good solid candidate, small business owner, and war veteran stepping into that seat. So we've got, I think there's an opportunity to pick up that seat, as well as the Young Kim seat. Obviously, Gil Cisneros narrowly lost that election in 2020. And we have Dr. Mahmoud, who is just announced this morning. He, in a matter of weeks, he had raised just over $1 million. She only has 2.6 million on hand. So for him to raise $1 million virtually overnight really says that seat may be in play. The landscape of that seat is harder. So I would put the Steele seat probably slightly ahead of the Kim seat. But I do think we've got the opportunity to pick that up. And if you really wanted to stretch the seat that Tom McClintock moved out of, and Kevin Kiley, who was one of the proponents on the recall, that is, we've got a great candidate there, Kermit Jones, who ultimately I think the party will ultimately endorse, a doctor, a veteran, who I think can maybe give that seat a run. It depends on how the election shakes out. So I do think we've got some real opportunities, not only to hold what we have, but also pick up a seat or two, maybe even three, depending on how the election goes. So I'm excited for it.
Nice. So if you're idealistic, you're thinking we got to keep 3 of these tough seats, and we have 4 to 5 pickup opportunities up and down the state. And that's good to know. And again, with a state like California, how big it is, there's a lot of work that can be done. Let's go to state legislative races. We have a veto-proof majority in both chambers. How do we make sure we hold on to these supermajorities? And what is the map pretty safe? Are there things that we don't know about that you want to make sure is brought to people's attentions with regards to our state legislative map?
Yeah, I mean, we're down. We're close to a supermajority at the moment in the assembly because there's been so many snap retirements and resignations for a whole variety of reasons. So we're down 4, I think, at the moment. So we're at 55, 56 at the moment. So there's, San Francisco has its own special election that's taking place with our vice chair of the party, David Campos, as one of the candidates. But that's happening around the state. We are having to run an endorsement process every 3 minutes for, when there's an open seat. But I think overall, I think the map has probably gotten even more favorable to Democrats, especially in the assembly. There are 59 seats of the 80 seats that are solid Democratic seats. There's roughly 6 or so that I would put in the more purple category, competitive category. We hold, I believe, 2 of those are 3 of those are currently held by Democrats. One of which is running for Congress. Adam Gray is running in that seat that Harder formerly held. So, I think we could certainly easily get back to 62, maybe 63, and depending on if we won out completely, you could get to 65 or so. So I don't see the supermajority in the assembly being in danger. Certainly, we're going to run hard and try to pick up as many of those seats as we can. And in the Senate, I don't see many changes. There's most of the competitive races that are being that will take place in 2024. because obviously only half of the Senate runs in any one election. So fairly quiet on the Senate side. There'll be a little bit of action on the Assembly side.
Got it. Thank you. You are so good at this, Rusty. Before we move on to the kind of final portion, kind of statewide stuff, I want to acknowledge a couple of questions in the chat. So a question from Tanya is about whether or not we're getting our message out on TV to Latino voters, and specifically in language, and what the TV ad strategy for Latino voters is. And then two specific questions about congressional districts. One, can you comment on Josh Harder's new district? And then Jim and Stephen wanted to ask about Calvert's seat in Palm Springs. So do you mind touching those 3 points?
Yeah, so I with regards to communicating with Latino voters on TV, if I had more money, I'd absolutely be on TV in language.
Hey, click on that donate link, everyone. Click on that donate link. It's in the chat.
Telemundo and other smaller channels around the state. We certainly, especially once we get to the general election, and we have the opportunity of supporting the whole ticket, we'll absolutely be communicating with Spanish voters and AAPI voters around the state in language. We did that in 2020, and we'll do that again in 2022. I will say, I think the Harder seat, he has moved into a better seat. It's a seat that Biden won by 56%, so a pretty solid majority in 2020. And even Governor Newsom won that district by 52% in 2018. I don't have the recall numbers at the moment. I know the seat that he was in, the recall passed by about 3 points. And so there was some speculation that he was in a tougher seat as a result of that. Obviously, transitioning into the new seat that he is in, he's got a much better opportunity. That, and he's sitting on, I don't know, $3, $4, $5 million at this point. He's been a pretty prolific fundraiser. In Southern California, I think the Ken Calvert seat was the question. I think that's one we want to take a closer look at to make sure we've got a solid candidate there. It is going to be a tougher seat, and it will be a question of whether the DCCC seeks to invest in that particular seat. That's the challenge, where the state party works with our national partners, who end up putting in those significant resources to be able to drive a national narrative and message for us to be successful on the ground. And so we haven't fully got to that seat as far as a real target, but depending on how the election goes, maybe we will. I mean, the goal is to really get the entire Republican congressional delegation in California into a minivan. If we can do that, 6, 7, I think that's pretty good.
I love that image. Let's let that minivan image lead us out of this conversation. My final questions to you are about voter suppression and voter registration. Obviously, across the country, there has been an assault on voting rights. We've had a lot of unfortunate frontline conversations with battleground state chairs over the last few weeks. I hope that there's nothing you're fighting against in the state of California, but I do want to ask, in case there is, are there any efforts to suppress the vote? And what are we doing to make sure that we register as many people as we can in advance of the midterms?
Well, certainly registration is an effort that has to take place on a year-round basis. California Democrats have bent over backwards to make it easier to be able to have your voice heard at the ballot box. But I think it's important for everybody to remember that there is some part of every part of this country in California. And so the voter suppression tactics you're seeing in Arizona and Texas and Florida and Virginia and other parts of the country, they do happen here in California. Are they as widespread? No, they're not. But we have to remember that elections are run by county registrars. And so the party's role has been to stand up an incredibly robust voter protection program, not only to remind people and beat back misinformation that takes place, but also recruiting volunteer attorneys, legal observers to spot and address issues that they see. In the Latino community of parts of Fresno, should not have their voting machines unavailable to them due to an electrical outage between 9 a.m. and 12 noon on election day. That shouldn't happen, but it did happen. It happened in November 2020, and it was a Democratic Party observer who saw that and phoned that back into headquarters, and we were able to get on that immediately. And so those types of things happen throughout the state, and we have to ensure that we continue to push back against it. And it's not just a local strategy. You had the state Republican Party supporting this idea of ballot boxes being placed at campaign headquarters of Republican candidates and county committee, Republican county committees offices, which was illegal. The Secretary of State and the Attorney General got involved and ultimately shut that down. And so those are the types of things that we have to stay on top of. We recruited roughly 300 volunteer attorneys in 2020, and nearly a tenfold increase of what we've typically done to make sure that we stay on top of that throughout the state.
Nice. Thank you so much, Rusty. One more specific question from the chat, and then the final question is, what can people do to help and how can they stay involved? But people are asking about Karen Bass's seat. Obviously, Congresswoman Bass is running for mayor of Los Angeles to replace Mayor Garcetti. Do you know what's going on with that seat yet? Is the map clear? And then please, if we can end with specific things that people can do on this call and post facto when they listen to it to help advance the strategy of the party.
Yeah, so it's certainly a solid Democratic seat, and therefore will absolutely elect a Democrat to that seat. I think probably Sidney Kamlager, current senator, is the likely front runner for that seat. Not to say there won't be other candidates, but I think she's on the consent calendar for the party endorsement for the first week of March, and I think is a solid candidate for that.
I love Sydney. She's so great. She's wonderful.
Yeah, watch Wednesdays. I encourage everybody to check it out. It'll give you put a smile on your face. How folks can help? Go to cadem.org. cadem.org. You can contribute. You can volunteer. You can engage, and ultimately, with the volunteering, be able to get on our Mobilize link, which allows you to connect with the activity that you want to engage in, where you want to engage, what community you want to be involved with. So all the activities happening around the state are in that one place on that one portal. So I encourage you to check that out. And lastly, I would just say is for everyone to stay engaged. I know everyone who is here is paying attention. Continue to engage your family, your friends, your neighbors, your coworkers, not just in your own communities, but to be able to project the power of especially the Bay Area into other parts of the state. And thank you, Manny, for the opportunity to be with you. And I'm always grateful for the work that you do, not only supporting our party, but supporting our state and doing work around the country. So thanks so much.
Thank you, Rusty. I really appreciate the time, and thank you very much, everyone. Let's give Rusty some love and support. You shoulder a big and heavy burden being the chair of this party, and I know you know this, Rusty, but you have an army of folks, probably led by General Pfeiffer, out there to help make sure that we get all this stuff done, and we cannot take our eye off our home state while we do all the necessary work to help states around the country. I just want to take a minute and say how thankful I am to all of you for tuning into this series. We started this series as a way to continue to keep folks engaged at the beginning of the Omicron surge. We had to pull down all of the events that we had planned for basically December and January. And instead of just sitting on our thumbs, we decided to figure out some new ways to keep people engaged and get them off their tuchus and start and thinking about the midterms. Tuchus means butt, Rusty, by the way. It's a Yiddishism. And I'm really proud of us, you guys. We had conversations with the chairs of the Democratic parties of Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Arizona, Georgia, New Hampshire, North Carolina, Texas, and California. So go us, go all of you. For those who are going to be listening to this post facto, this is just the beginning. We have a lot of work to do over the next 6 to 9 months. We have money to raise. We have phone calls to make. We have seats to keep and seats to win. So do not be glum about it. Let's get to work. Let's fight hard for all these races. And let's follow all these amazing chairs into the battle that will be the midterms. And I look forward to being there alongside all of you. Have a wonderful day, everyone, and we'll see you soon.